Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on teaching soft skills. My name is Denise Bodart and I'll be your panelist today. We'd like to welcome all of you to today's webinar, and if anyone has any issues at all with the volume or audio, please let me know via the chat feature. So with that, we'll begin. Here's an overview of what we'll be discussing today. We'll first take a high-level look at the employability skills curriculum as a whole, and then talk about what employability skills or soft skills are and the need for them. Then we'll take a deeper dive into some of the lesson plans and end up with a few sample activities from the curriculum. So first of all, let's define what these skills are. Employability skills, also known as soft skills, are the skills needed to help get and keep a job. The RealCareer Employability Skills curriculum is designed to be used in any CTE course. It may be used as a standalone unit for teaching soft skills or as a supplement to materials you may already be using. Helping your students become college and career ready is a primary goal for our programs. One way to ensure career readiness is to give students the opportunity to actively practice a variety of soft skills. This new employability skills curriculum introduces participants to many important soft skills desired by employers through a variety of activities and discussions relating to each soft skill. Do not underestimate the importance of soft skills in the workplace. In a recent study conducted by Millennial Branding, the question was asked of managers and also Generation Y employees on the importance of soft skills. 61% of managers and 65% of Gen Y believe that these skills are most important. Many believe it's easier to teach the hard job skills, but much more difficult to teach those soft skills. Another statistic by Leadership IQ is the fact that 89% of new hires that don't work out, the reason is because of that soft skills gap. According to a poll by CNBC, 44% of employers chose the lack of soft skills as the biggest gap in the U.S. workforce. Now, this is greater than the technical skills gap that we always hear so much about. Let's take a deeper dive into each of the lessons that are a part of the RealCareer Employability Skills Program. Lesson 1. This lesson will help participants learn about various types of communication and how important effective and clear communication is on the job. Students use clear verbal communication skills first in a small group activity. Groups of 4 are formed and each student is assigned a role: director, manager, creator, or observer. Now the director is shown an image that he must verbally describe to the manager. The creator is located in a place where they cannot hear this. The observer follows and watches, taking note of everything that's working and what isn't. Then the manager goes to the creator to draw that image as described by the manager. Now, after this activity, you'll compare the creator's drawn image to the image originally given to the director, and you'll see how close or not the creator got for accuracy. Then the next stage of the lesson focuses on written communication. Participants are taught how to write a business letter in block style. The third activity involves using nonverbal communication, and students play a version of charades and think of how in different ways people communicate non-verbally. Students complete a handout on how various body language may be perceived in a workplace setting. And then this lesson concludes with a class discussion on how we change the way we communicate with different audiences such as family, friends, and coworkers. Lesson 2 on effective communication is really all about the importance of that teamwork and skills needed to be an effective team member. They're introduced to the 3 most common types of work teams. Now, the first activity involves individual versus team solutions. So you'll read a scenario and each student will have 5 minutes to identify as many solutions to the issue as possible. Next, students are given a characteristics of an effective workplace team handout, and they reflect on the scenario that they just worked with. Would it have been easier to identify solutions while working with a team? The next activity is an effective team leadership activity. And in this, each student will lead a small group through a specific activity. Each leadership task is about 10 minutes, and students will reflect on the type of leader they were after their activity. The third activity is the teamwork survival exercise. The class will read a scenario together which involves making group decisions on the most important things they'll need to survive on an island. And then the lesson concludes with a self-inventory of teamwork skills. Students also watch several short movie clips, such as from Apollo 13, that illustrate good teamwork in action. Lesson 3 focuses on the important skills of problem solving and critical thinking. The lesson begins with learning the 7 steps to solving a problem effectively. And then the first activity is a problem solving as an individual. As a work-related problem scenario is read, they solve the problem in that scenario. And then the second activity is problem solving on a work team. And each group is given one work problem solving scenario to work through as a group. And then after that is problem solving or critical thinking. Will present a case scenario and they'll work through that to a solution in 15 or 20 minutes. And then this lesson ends with a short discussion with students asking if any of them have ever had a problem that occurred on a job that they've had. So you can ask questions like, what type of problem was it? What steps were taken to resolve it? Who made the decisions? And so on. In this lesson, lesson 4, students will consider how technology is used in various occupations and how this has changed over time. The lesson begins by showing suggested video clips on technology in the workplace. The first activity is creating a PowerPoint presentation. Students are tasked with creating a 10-slide presentation on an occupation of their choosing. So they'll research things like typical duties, work environment, education required, and average salary and job outlook, and then present this to the class. The second activity is creating a basic spreadsheet using Excel. Students are given the task of creating a one-day menu, including food and beverage choices. So they use all of the data that they collect and create a daily calorie spreadsheet. And then from that is how they go into Excel and show how they've learned to do that. And then the third tech activity is using the internet to research and write a blog. The topic that they research is the 21st century employee, what employers are looking for in today's workforce. And then the final part of this lesson is a self-reflection exercise about the technology skills and interests. Oops, sorry. Here we go. The focus of this lesson will be to help students learn about the importance of time as a finite resource and how to manage it well. The lesson begins with a suggested time management self-assessment of resources. And then the first activity will introduce something called the priority matrix. Students learn how to identify tasks that are urgent, not urgent, important, and not important, and divide them into 4 quadrants. Students are then divided into small groups and are given a list of work tasks that they need to prioritize into the 4 quadrants of the matrix. The second activity is identifying and overcoming barriers to time management. Pairs of students read through the work scenario that is that's just full of time management challenges. They'll identify all of the barriers in that scenario and then potential time management solutions. The third time management activity takes students through a personal time study for 1 week. After completing this study, they'll add up each task into various categories. And they'll look at it and think, what can they do in order to have more time to do the things they don't have to do, have time to do right now? Do they feel overscheduled and things of that nature? This lesson will end with students reflecting on 4 ways that time management can help them in their personal life as well as their work life. The interview lesson begins with a discussion about job interviews and the purpose of an interview. Students will receive a types of a job interview handout highlighting 11 types. Participants are next given a stages of a job interview organizer. The instructor will share information about each stage of the interview process. The class is divided into small groups, and each group has 1 category of questions to brainstorm about. And then each group presents their question list, and a master question list is prepared. Then students can go online and find a job to apply for. After students have prepared answers to the questions on the list, they'll schedule a mock interview. Now, it's suggested, if possible, to use local HR professionals and invite them into class to conduct 10-minute interviews with each student. And then this lesson will conclude with a short mini lesson on writing a thank you letter. Being motivated is a key employability skill that will increase success on the job. This lesson begins by defining intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Participants will identify things that personally motivate themselves. And then some key discussion questions will be asked, such as, is one type of motivation better than another? If you were a manager, what would you do to motivate extrinsically motivated people, etc.? Students will also complete a motivation self-assessment. And then the last part of the lesson involves identifying characteristics of motivated workers. Students think about someone they have worked with that they consider to be highly motivated. What characteristics did they observe? A class discussion will follow about the type of people they would like to work with. What are ways to keep yourself and others motivated at work? Who is responsible? Students complete a motivation and goal-setting worksheet. A person's work ethic is a compilation of all of the characteristics that make you who you are. This lesson helps students understand what a positive work ethic is comprised of and how it can lead to being a valuable professional as an employee. Students will complete an exercise identifying the most important characteristics reflecting a strong work ethic. Students will complete a work ethic self-reflection exercise. Now, this is confidential and meant for their own personal use. They are to identify characteristics that they believe other people would use to describe their work ethic, and then set 2 measurable goals for improving their work ethic. The last part of the lesson involves a work ethics scenario. Small groups of students read through and identify positive characteristics and the negative. They discuss questions such as, if you were her supervisor or manager, what could you do to help her become a better employee? If you were the employee, what could you do to improve your work ethic? If you were a coworker, what advice would you give to her? Now, listening is more than just hearing. It is key to effective communication. Without the ability to listen, the message can be misunderstood and communication can break down. Students will discuss how listening is defined and that it requires concentrating and use of other senses to be fully engaged. One key statistic is that adults spend an average of 70% of their time engaged in some form of communication. Students will contemplate, how can good listening skills improve your performance at work? Students will learn tips for being an active listener, and then they'll put these tips to practice. One volunteer will help model the summarize and repeat or paraphrasing technique. Students pair up and one is the paraphraser while the other one is the speaker, and they engage in conversation through active listening techniques. The last part of the lesson focuses on identifying potential barriers to communication. They'll have a list of solutions that they can put into practice for becoming better listeners. A person's ability to give and receive respect can make a significant impact at work. Being respectful has many benefits for employers and employees alike. Getting respect can also have a great impact on one's self-worth. Once students have given some thought to how respectful they are, discussion questions are asked, such as, how do you feel when someone judges you without knowing you or bases their judgment on appearance only? What are some things you can do to make a work environment more respectful? The last activity includes a series of workplace case scenarios. Each small group will take one of the case studies and identify tips to ensure a more positive outcome, and then these are shared with the class. One example might be, your coworker Janelle confides in you that the manager at the restaurant has been criticizing her in front of customers. She's ready to quit because she's tired of looking foolish in front of customers. What should you do? Responsibility has to do with integrity and character. How you accept responsibility, especially on the job, will build respect and trust with coworkers and supervisors. The lesson begins by defining just what responsibility is. Students are asked to identify ways in which they have to be responsible. So students will consider the types of responsibility they have to various groups and complete the how responsible am I self-assessment. The lesson ends with a work scenario being shared. Students will complete the responsibility at work activity, answering questions regarding a workplace scenario. For example, Marty works on the assembly line for a large computer factory. His company received a very large order for 500 computers, and they need everyone to work overtime for the next 5 days in order to get the job done. Marty has plans to go to the movie tonight. So you dissect that and talk about responsibility. To successfully navigate in an ever-changing world, young people need to be adaptable. Think of changes that have occurred over the lifespan, such as medical breakthroughs, new technology, new career opportunities. This will help students take a closer look at adaptability and flexibility and consider why these skills are in high demand from employers. We begin by asking students, are flexibility and adaptability the same thing? How does it apply to a work environment? A few key statistics will be shared, such as on a list of top 10 skills employers want, flexibility comes in ninth, or 91% of HR directors think by the year 2018, people will be recruited on their abilities to deal with change and uncertainty. Students are put into small groups and brainstorm ways to show employers that they are flexible and adaptable. The last activity will have students choosing an occupation and research and discover typical job duties. Students will give a situation where they need to demonstrate adaptability or flexibility in that career. Employers often seek to hire people with strong interpersonal skills. This lesson will help students understand what they are and how to apply them in the workplace. You'll begin by asking students if they know what interpersonal skills are. Have they heard of social skills or people skills? The same thing. You'll discuss which interpersonal skills students believe are most important and then access a list of them. Students will consider their own interpersonal skill levels by completing an interpersonal skills self-assessment. The last part of the lesson deals with the art of starting a conversation. Sometimes people find it difficult to start a conversation with a stranger. Many times employment situations call upon employees to speak to people that they don't know. This lesson will help them develop strategies for starting a conversation in a variety of different scenarios. Students will share their strategies at the end of class. Negotiation is the art of effectively communicating about a problem or issue to try to reach an acceptable solution by both parties. This lesson will help students learn the 5-step negotiation process and how to apply it in an employment situation. Students will learn the terms negotiation versus mediation. Students will take a closer look at each of the 5 stages of the negotiation process: prepare, discuss, propose, bargain, and agree. This will lead into a discussion about pitfalls to avoid and tips for achieving a win-win solution in the negotiating process. Students will choose one of the types of agreements that they've learned about and create a scenario where they use that process to negotiate a win. Then the final activity will be a discussion of solutions to try when a win-win is not possible. They'll read through each scenario, choosing a solution, and explaining the reason for their choice. Networking is the best way to find a job, according to many studies and articles. Just what is it? It's the cultivation of productive relationships for employment or business. To get better at it, you need to practice. Students will be introduced to networking by looking into all of the ways they can think of to find a job. A majority of jobs are not advertised, so how are people finding out about jobs? Networking. One statistic to share is that 41% of people have landed a job through networking, but other statistics are significantly higher than that at 80%. The first task will be to have students complete a short research activity where they research various networking channels for a specific type of occupation. Then next, they'll learn how to write an email networking message for finding employment. Last, you'll discuss how to use social media to help find a job. Students will complete a social networking journal activity. Thinking about your own social networking habits, how do you think using social networks can support your job search efforts? Does the use of social networking make you feel more comfortable than face-to-face communication? Choose yes or no and explain why. Now, patience is a vital interpersonal skill, the ability to tolerate situations without becoming upset or letting your emotions get in the way. This can be a very valuable asset in the workplace. This lesson will help students develop the ability to think through and resolve problems without acting impulsively or emotionally. The lesson begins by reading a work scenario to the class, and it involves you being put into a situation that could make you very impatient or anxious. Students identify how they're feeling physically, mentally, and emotionally, and these are identified as symptoms of impatience. Finding the root cause of this impatience and having a coping mechanism is the focus of the next activity. Students will complete the finding the cause and managing the symptoms. They'll identify triggers in a small group and identify management strategies to share. The next activity discusses how to improve your patience at work. Students will design a motivational poster that an employer could post in a workplace entitled, keep calm, and carry on. Many careers require some sort of speaking ability, whether presenting in front of large groups or not. The fear of public speaking impacts many people. This lesson will give students information on how to overcome common public speaking issues to effectively conduct a presentation. Fear of public speaking, also known as glossophobia, affects 3 out of 4 people. It is a valuable soft skill that can be practiced and improved. You'll begin by sharing a list of the top 10 tips for effective presentations. Then the students are given a death by PowerPoint exercise where they write down ways to make a slide presentation more engaging and interesting. And the 10-20-30 rule is shared. Include no more than 10 slides, last no more than 20 minutes, and use no less than 30-point font size. Students will put this into practice by developing a 10-slide presentation about an occupation of interest. Self-confidence is an important trait to have in every area of our lives, including in the workplace. People who lack self-confidence can find it difficult to become successful. Confident people draw others to them. This lesson will give students tools to use to build their self-esteem and self-confidence. You'll begin by defining self-esteem and self-efficacy. They'll take the "how confident are you" self-assessment. Next, students will describe a situation where they do not speak up for themselves and how they could become more self-assertive. They will be led through a series of discussion questions to help them better understand self-esteem and confidence. For example, if someone has high self-confidence, would you think they're conceited? Why or why not? Why do you think some people have high self-esteem and others have low? Do you have control over your sense of self-esteem? So students will learn the importance of positive self-talk. Tips will also be shared, and they'll conduct a SWOT analysis to help them identify their strengths to build on, weaknesses to minimize, opportunities to realize, and threats to control so they can build their self-confidence. Some stress is normal. However, excessive stress can interfere with your health and well-being. This lesson will help your students learn to recognize the ways they respond to stress and what they can do to manage it successfully. The lesson begins by defining stress and having students complete the signs of a stress mind map, where they need to think of the signs and symptoms of stress, including physical, emotional, health, and work-related. Now that students can recognize the signs, they need to learn to manage them. So you'll share a list of stress management techniques with students, and then after that, students will get into small groups and work together to prepare a short presentation on one stress management technique. The lesson will conclude with students reading about various work stressors and give an example of a positive response. So now that you've learned about the 19 lessons that are part of the RealCareer Employability Skills Program, let's talk a little bit more about the other components to it. First of all, those 19 lessons are in the teacher guide. You will also get student workbooks, and there are presentation slides that go along with the teacher guide, and then there are also workplace scenario cards. Now, this entire program is available both in printed hard copy for $4.99. Now that package includes the teacher guide, 20 student workbooks, the presentation slides, and the scenario cards. And then after you use up those 20 student workbooks, you can get more on the website store. Or if you prefer, there is a school-wide site license that's an online version where it gives you access to the teacher guide, the student workbooks, the slides, and the scenario cards. And any teacher in your building, your school building, can use them in an unlimited fashion for $9.99, and that's a 5-year site license. So it gives you a couple of different options based on the size of your program and the numbers of faculty or teachers that may wish to use the program. So again, the 19 lessons. More about the scenario cards. The scenario cards are used to generate discussion and challenge participants to identify a solution using a variety of soft skills learned in the program. So each of the 19 cards has a different soft skill on it. A workplace scenario is on the card. They flip it over, and this can be a small group thing, a whole class activity, or individual, but there are points of view to consider as they try to work through the scenario. And they also have key questions that can be asked to help them work through the scenario. So we think you'll find the scenario cards to be a very engaging part of the program. So here are just a few additional resources for career success that we'd like to pass along. Realityworks has a blog, a very active blog at realityworks.com/blog that you can find all sorts of product and career information. We also have a Facebook presence, and we'd welcome you to check us out there. And in addition, we also have a free career exploration curricula at the link that you see on the screen, realityworks.com/career exploration. And it takes you through a series of lessons that explore a variety of careers from early childhood education to health occupations. We also have some welding career exploration out there, if that's your area. So there's lots of different free lessons if you go to the link that you see on the bottom of the page. So we welcome you to check that out as well. At this time, I'd like to take any questions you might have on the Employability Skills Program that we outlined today. If you have any questions, please put them into the chat button, and it will alert me to any questions, and I'd be happy to answer them. I'll give just a moment to see if we have any questions today. And looks like no questions. So with that, I'd like to thank you for participating in our webinar today. And this webinar has been recorded, and the link will be shared with you in the next couple days. And then it also will be posted on our product support website under webinars if you'd like to watch it again. Thank you for participating in today's webinar, and have a good day.